your station, 101 FM, with Saturday Sports Scene.
Good morning and welcome to Sports Scene for another week. We take through all the latest and greatest issues from the world of sport, all the way from the locals up to the internationals. I'm your host, Kevin Braysher. Jam-packed show for you once again today here on 101 FM. Plenty happening. Joining me at the panel, it's a full desk this morning. We've got everybody in. Joining us from the AFL Queensland Hall of Fame and the Southport Sharks, Mr. Craig Crowley. Craig, welcome to the show.
Hello, Kev. How are you?
Very good, thanks, mate. It's a big day in sport, and last night it's Geelong getting up over Sydney in the AFL.
In complete contrast to last week, a game was scrappy. It was just a magic game to watch, just a dead set shootout, and you really saw some champion football. So.
Absolutely right. I didn't catch it. Obviously, I was watching the Rugby League International last night, but just from some of the highlights, there was some really class footy getting played last night. We'll, of course, talk about that a little later in the show. Also joining us at the desk from the QRL, Mr. Ethan James. Ethan, welcome to the show once again, mate.
Morning, Kev. Always good to be here.
Always good to have you, mate. And slow start for the Aussies last night, but a comfortable win in the end.
Yeah, it was. Their skill and talent sort of prevailed towards the end. The Kiwis, they had their chances in the first half, and they probably should have got a few more tries there, but we'll have a bit of more in-depth chat about that later.
We certainly will. Also joining us from the Australian Karting Association, Mr. Lee Hanatscheck. Lee, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Kev. Great to be with you yet again on a lovely Saturday morning.
It is. It's a nice, cool one so far this Saturday morning. But, mate, Mark Webber, is he staying or is he going with the F1? There's been conflicting reports.
If I was a betting man, which I'm not, of course, no, we don't condone betting on this. Well, maybe we do. But, no, I would say he won't be in Formula 1 next year. He'll be driving something, but I don't think he'll be driving Formula 1. Ooh. 200 Grand Prix this weekend up in Bahrain for Webber. It's a great achievement. But no, I would be putting money that he won't be in Formula 1 next year, because where's there to go? There is nowhere to go except for where he is now. And I can't see him being there next year.
Yeah, everything else would be a bit of a step down, would you say, profile at least, yeah?
Well, you could go to Ferrari for a one-year deal, but why would Ferrari pick up a driver for 1 year? There's no benefit in a team going, well, we'll have you for 1 year when you've already got established stars at, Jenson Buttons at McLaren, you got Massa and Alonso at Ferrari. Why would you put Webber in just for a year just because he's a nice bloke? No.
You got a good point there, Lee. Also joining us on the show this morning, Sports Scene founder and former host, Mr. Darren Madigan. Darren, welcome to the show.
Good morning, everybody, and what a week it's been. Normally I try and think of something reasonably humorous to say at this time, but how can you? It's been a week of the highest highs and the lowest lows, but great stuff. Adam Scott, what I believe is probably our America's Cup moment for the century so far. The tick in the box for a nation that we still hadn't managed to do that one yet, but now we have. So great to him, and great to see that he also didn't forget about his mentor and hero, the great white shark, Greg Norman, who came runner-up 3 times in that great tournament. Of course, we can't...
there for a sec, Darren.
Yeah, mate.
I just ask who else has actually polished off the golf clubs this week and... thought that, let's go play golf?
Yeah. You do.
It was a bit like that, wasn't it? It was a bit like seeing your favourite footy team win the grand final and going out and having a kick afterwards. You have to do it. It was just a magical Monday morning here in Australia. And if there's probably 2 things that were left in my mind, and I'm happy for people to jump on our Facebook site and say what they think. But as far as those America's Cup moments that we still have left in Australian sport, for me that was one of them. The other one is probably winning the women's gold medal at the Olympics in basketball. We've come so close, and I think one day we might just do that. But I can't think of anything else off the top of my head that falls into that category. But if you can, jump on our Facebook page at SportzScene and tell us what you think. Also, we should pay our respects this morning to one of our own in the industry, one of the greatest broadcasters of all time in America, Pat Summerall, the age of 82. He passed away during the week. Nobody's called more Super Bowls than this man. He's called a ton of US Masters golf and also the US Open in tennis as well. So Vail, the great Pat Summerall, and also our thoughts go out to the people that were lost during the week in Boston. It's our greatest fear. We managed to go 3 Olympic Games since September 11, 2001 without any incident, and I guess they were always going to pick one of them sooner or later, and they finally did.
Just before we move on with the rest of the show, just a reminder, we have a sausage sizzle with 101 FM. All weekend, your radio station will be cooking up a storm at Office Works on Crompton Road, Underwood. Come and meet some of the team from 101 FM and grab yourself something delicious to eat and drink and support your voice in the community. Your radio station, 101 FM. Quick look at some of the results from overnight in the Rugby League, the International, the Anzac Test. Australia 32 to beat New Zealand 12. That was down in front of a packed house at Canberra Stadium, a big crowd. Ferocious game in the first half, but Australia ran away with it really in the second half. We'll talk about that after the first break. In the AFL Round 4, Geelong at 19-10-124 defeat the Sydney Swans 16-7-103 at the SCG in a great game of footy, as Craig was alluding to earlier. In the Super 15, 2 games overnight, 2 Australian teams in action as well. The Waratahs 25-20 over the Chiefs at Allianz Stadium. Terrific win there for the Waratahs over the reigning premiers, and Izzy Folau picking up a try that's picked up some headlines this morning as well. And the other game overnight, the Hurricanes 22 defeat the Western Force 16 at Westpac Stadium. The Force, of course, coming off a big upset win over the Crusaders at home last week, which was great for them. Darren, what's happening in the worlds of tennis and golf?
Well, straight out of the majors, golf doesn't stop. The RBC Heritage Tournament in Hilton Head, South Carolina. Kevin Streelman currently leading the tournament at 6 under after a second round 70. Best Australians at the moment, Stuart Appleby and Mark Leishman tied for 6th, and Jason Day a bit further down, tied for 25th. As far as the girls are concerned, they are in Oahu in Hawaii. Suzanne Pedersen leading the tournament at 13 under par after a 65 and a 69. Best placed Australian, Lydia Ko at 4 under, and Kari is tied for 39th down at 1 under. Monte Carlo Masters, the tennis, the semi-finalists have been decided. Novak Djokovic will play Fognini, and Rafa Nadal will play Jean-Wilfried Songa, and you would suspect that's probably going to be a Djokovic-Nadal final, one of the big tournaments leading up to the French Open. As far as the women are concerned, this weekend it is Fed Cup around the world. Our World Group playoff match, we are playing Switzerland, and our team will be Samantha Stoser, Casey Delacqua, Ashley Barty from Ipswich, and Jarmila Gadasova. So good luck to them for this weekend. It's being played on red clay too, so really looking forward to that. As far as Sam is concerned, she is so very, very good on that surface.
Absolutely, and leading up to the French Open at Roland Garros coming up in the future, not far away now. Big show planned for you today here on Sports Scene. As we alluded to earlier, mate, with Adam Scott, first Aussie to win the Masters. We'll talk about that at 8:45, along with the A-League Grand Final, which is this Sunday afternoon between the Western Sydney Wanderers and the Central Coast Mariners. The Melbourne Demons in the AFL, Craig, I know. So, as if this club needs more bad news, but they've been dragged into the drugs scandal with Asada. We'll talk about that in the second hour with all the rest of the AFL. Motorsport, we've got F1, V8s, NASCAR, IndyCar, and then to finish it all off at the end of the show, we'll talk some netball, the retirement of one of the greats of Australian sport, and Black Caviar during the week, and we'll talk some Super 15 as well. But after the break, a special Rep Footy edition of our Rugby League discussion, so stay here with us on 101 FM.
Wait, huh?
Oui, monsieur.
Can I have the rest of this in a doggy bag?
But of course, I love doggies. But please make sure you store the food properly so it doesn't go off and cause food poisoning.
Looks fine to me.
Oui, it's fine now, but after 4 hours unrefrigerated, I wouldn't feed it to a dog.
I was thinking of having it tomorrow night.
Well, that's okay, as long as you put it straight in the fridge when you get home. Wait a minute, you don't have a dog, do you?
No, but you're not French either.
A message from the Food Safety Information Council.
Join the 101 FM Supporters Club today and be in this month's prize draw, plus enjoy future discounts on 101 FM ticketed events and merchandise. For just $10 per year, you can become part of the 101 FM family. Current 101 FM subscribers will automatically be transferred to the Supporters Club. Phone 38088 101 and join the 101 FM Supporters Club now.
101 FM. You're listening to Saturday Sports Scene on 101 FM.
Welcome back to Sports Scene here on 101 FM. It's 15 minutes past 8 now here on your local station. Next fresh news update coming up at the top of the hour. It's Kevin Braysher, Craig Crowley, Ethan James, Lee Hanatscheck and Darren Madigan all with you this morning. It's time to talk some rugby league. It's a standalone representative weekend this weekend. We got the test match last night. We got the Pacific test match tonight between Samoa and Tonga, which is very exciting. The under-20 State of Origin. And then on Sunday afternoon, we got the City Country. We'll touch on all of those points. We'll start with the international last night, the Anzac Test match. Australia going up 32-12 over New Zealand at Canberra Stadium in front of a packed house. Really, how did you see this one, Ethan? New Zealand very, very strong in the first half, but as they have a tendency to do, particularly in these one-off encounters, they dropped off in the second half.
Yeah, it was a good match, but unfortunately it sort of followed the pattern that many Anzac Tests have sort of followed for the past few matches. I mean, the Kiwis, they started well. They were in it for the first half, 6-all at half-time. But as we've seen with them, unfortunately, for a little while now, they tend to drop off. The Aussies just too much skill and too much class, and they sort of ran away with it at the end. But I mean, they had their chances in the first half. There were a few very dubious no-try decisions, which I'm sure we'll have a chat about now. Alex Glenn there grounding the ball, and that obstruction call as well on Hodges.
What were your thoughts on it, Lee? I know you watched the game.
I think that New Zealand, certainly had their opportunities.
Yeah.
I feel that the obstruction call from the ref was, if Hodges hadn't have knocked on, was the right call. But to have a ref come out and go, well, the minor infringement, the major infringement overrules the minor infringement.
That was the weirdest part.
I'm like, hang on, what come first? He knocked it on. So if New Zealand had got the try then, it would have been play on. That was their advantage. But New Zealand got no advantage
from the knock-on.
Yeah. But Australia got the penalty for taking out Hodges. Or did he claim that the advantage was that they could have scored the try and they didn't? Yeah, it's...
See, that's why it was such a strange decision. Personally, I didn't have a problem with it. I thought, Hodges was in the motion of catching the ball as Nightingale went in to make the tackle. You watch it back in slow motion, it looks like he's holding on to him, but he wasn't holding on to him for a long time. No, I thought it was fine. I thought it was play on. I thought it was a try.
No, I feel as though he definitely just took him out. He was
catching the ball, mate.
Yeah, but at no point in time did he take control of the ball.
But he's not to know that he's not going to take control of the ball.
Yeah, I mean, I'm against. I think the call with the instruction was right.
Yeah.
But I think the fact that it was a knock-on first, New Zealand should have got the ball back.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, fair enough. Look, we can stay with that. That's totally fair. And either way, New Zealand have probably got a right to feel a little bit hard done by with that decision, and also that Alex Glenmont could have gone either way. But the reality is, I'm not the type of guy that likes to blame referees for results. New Zealand had plenty of chances in that first half, were well and truly on top going into half-time, and then just didn't turn up in the second half. Plenty of positives to take out of it for New Zealand, though. That first half performance was very good. Their forwards were very strong. And a lot of guys to come back, like Sonny Bill Williams, Jeremy Smith, Simon Mannering pulled out at the last minute, Benji Marshall come back. You throw in all of these guys, the Kiwis are going to be a very formidable side come World Cup at the end of the year.
Yeah, that's essentially their starting back row and key playmaker. Yeah. So, as you said, you throw those guys back in and they're a much better outfit. And in the longer tournaments where they have the chance and the opportunity to sort of spend time together as a squad, they generally do pretty well. They generally, they build into tournaments and they generally finish a lot better than they start. So I reckon they're a real shot of causing a few headaches in the World Cup later in the year. Yeah,
I agree totally. I thought Kieran Foran was very strong in that first half as well. He had the captaincy thrust on him really at the last minute. Like Benji Marshall was the captain last year. Now it's Simon Mannering. Now it seems to maybe third in line to the captain. But I thought he did a great job last night, Kieran Foran. I thought he was pretty strong, particularly in that first half. What do we make of the Australian performance, though? In that first half, a lot of defence. New Zealand got across the line a couple of times, but Australia, they spent the entire first half really on their line, and then in the second half they took it up a gear and New Zealand couldn't go with them. What do we make of Australia? Are there, despite the 20-point gap at the end, are there reasons for us to think that there's maybe some vulnerabilities in the Australian side?
I don't think so. I think the fact of the matter is that they were on the back foot from pretty much after they scored that first try, which was a bit of luck involved, just right place, right time. But after that, they were on the back foot, and they almost sort of handled the pressure, and then went, okay, after half time, let's turn it up, let's turn defence into offence, make it happen.
They did what they had to do.
Yeah, that's what I think that happens. But I do definitely agree that Australia are a better overall team in the one-off match like we had last night. They know how each other play. You could see that in the way they were throwing the ball around. They knew where everyone was going to be. New Zealand, on the other hand, didn't quite have the same fluid sort of running power. And World Cup, look out, because unfortunately I have to say it, the Kiwis will be a force.
They will. I agree totally. The one thing with the Australian team that maybe had me thinking about it leading into the Test matches, were they a front rower short? And last night, Kurt Gidley only got on the field with 10 minutes to go, and he only came on to replace Greg Inglis in the centres after Greg Inglis got hurt. We saw it last year in the Anzac Test. Daly Cherry Evans was picked on the bench and didn't get a run at all. You have to think if Inglis stayed fit the whole match, Gidley wouldn't have got a run at all either. Would they have been better served with a front rower on the bench, or another forward, and without this quote-unquote utility player on the bench? What are our thoughts on the way Kurt Gidley was used?
Yeah, the obsession with having a utility on the bench in rep footy is sort of perplexed me for a while now. I mean, they're there to cover injury essentially, and to carry a player like that who's not going to get a run essentially unless someone is hurt. You're basically playing with 16 instead of 17. So I think teams at rep level are better off putting an extra forward on the bench, and there's enough versatility and there's enough talent in the squad at that level to cover injuries in the halves mid-match or injuries in the backs, and they can shuffle around and do a decent enough job. And for a player just to come in and play 10 minutes in a match for his country, it's a waste of a spot, really, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree.
And with a utility player, using it for 10 minutes, that's just a stopgap sort of situation. Like, if he is a utility player, obviously he can play various spots, whether he can be a hooker, centre, fullback, whatever the case may be, and that's what primarily you use your utilities for. Maybe every now and again, maybe go through your halves, but in a situation like this, you're expecting a person to go out there, pick up the tempo of the game in 10 minutes. Now, if you use it as an interchange type situation, once again, I'm probably using the AFL to a certain extent, you're keeping a player fresh, so whether you take off your hooker for a while, maybe a halfback, maybe a 5/8, whatever this utility player can play, it gives them a little bit of a breather. Now, they need some time, to play the entirety of the game. It's pretty hard yards, continually running. And then on the upside of this, the utility player, when he comes on, has got a pick-up of the tempo. He knows how it's running and got a feel of the game, and you can utilise it. I think it's really strange that you use him for a short period of time where he's just it'll probably take him 2 or 3 minutes to pick up the tempo of the game. Hence, the game's nearly over by the time he plays it. I think it's quite strange they don't, if they're going to pick a utility player, use them in various spots to give their players a break.
I mean, you look at it, Australia's side last night, they had 3 fullbacks.
Right, that's the point I was about to make.
In the side, they had 3 fullbacks. So why do you need another utility player?
And not only that though, you look at the versatility of those guys, like Darius Boy, you can push him into the centres easily. Greg Inglis can play on the wing if need be, can play at 5'8". He's won a Clive Churchill medal at 5'8". He's a potential Dally M winner at fullback as well. There's a ton of versatility on that side. It just seems like an unnecessary spot to me where a guy, maybe Ben Hannett or Dave Shillington before he got hurt, bring on a big bopper to come in and, like you say, Craig, get the momentum going on that. Ethan, just one last word on the Test match before we move on.
Yeah, well, it's got me excited for the World Cup at the end of the year.
I'm excited, big Kev.
I'm excited. Big Ethan's excited. Anyway,
Big E.
That's the one. But no, I think the Kiwis showed enough that they'll be a force, especially when, as we were saying before, you put those quality players back in that they were missing last night. So yeah, bring on the International Rugby League at the end of the year.
Absolutely, something to look forward to there. You're listening to SportzScene here on 101 FM. It's 23 minutes past 8. Your next fresh news update coming up at the top of the hour at 9 o'clock. It's Kevin Braysher, Craig Crowley, Ethan James, Lee Hanatscheck and Darren Madigan, all with you going through a special Rep Weekend edition of the Rugby League section this week. Now it's time. There's only 5 NRL games left between now and the State of Origin teams get named. We're going to go through a little bit of both and sort of where people are sitting and maybe some bolters and the rest of it. We'll start with the Queenslanders. Ethan, a lot of this team sort of picks itself. There's a lot of stability in that side. Can you see any spots up for grabs in this team and any bolters knocking on the door that might push their way into this side?
Not particularly, no. Queensland have shown a tendency to be, on the back of 7 series straight, they've shown a tendency to be fairly loyal and fairly consistent in their selection. I think the starting 13 is pretty much set in stone, bar injuries. It depends on how they want to go with the makeup of the bench. I think they'll sort of go with 4 forwards there. Guys like Matt Gillette, Corey Parker, Ben Teo, Hannon will sort of be in the mix there for bench spots. I can't see too many surprises, and I can't really see any bolters forcing their way in between now and then.
I tend to agree. One thing that Queensland's lost is, we'll go back to front rowers again, lose Petro Sivanasiva from last year. I assume the same 3 guys who were there with him last year will be there again in Matt Scott, Dave Shillington, Ben Hannett. Do we need that 4th front rower to come onto the bench? Maybe a guy like Jacob Lillyman?
Potentially, and we were discussing this off air, and that was their sort of one of the keys to success, rotating those four prop forwards. But in terms of what New South Wales will throw at Queensland, I think they might be better off perhaps going with a lighter forward on the bench, maybe someone like a Corey Parker who's sort of a bit more mobile and can sort of better footwork to sort of cover the ruck in that aspect. So. But yeah, they've got an embarrassment of riches really to choose from. So whichever way they go, I'm sure
yes,
they'll do the job.
Just a question on that, Ethan, and Kev, you can probably add to this as much as possible. Queensland have been very successful, obviously, and that's documented.
Yep.
They don't have a country city game, and they come out and they pick their best possible players from what they see from week to week. Just asking a question now, it's a great concept what the New South Wales do by having a city. It gives everyone a great opportunity to play representative. But does that cloud the selectors' mind to a certain extent about picking the New South Wales side? Instead of just going, no, this is the side we should pick and format that, they go to someone who they might bring up in the city country game who's a bit of a left field and plays extremely well. All of a sudden, hang on, we've got a bit of confusion here because he's played well enough to be in this side. It looks to me the Queenslanders pick a trusted and a selected side that's, they've done the job. Whereas New South Wales seem to chop and change every year, and I reckon this adds to the confusion. Would that be fair in saying that?
I think I tend to agree with that, and we've seen in past years guys who have performed really well in city country still not forced their way into the side, even though every year they claim it's a legitimate selection trial. We saw Ryan Hinchcliffe get man of the match this time last year. Didn't play any of the 3 games, and guys who didn't play pulled out due to injury, quote unquote, for this game. Those guys sort of get picked in ahead of them. So you question what it's there for and whether it's just throwing a spanner into the works completely.
That's one thing I was going to say is that you look at it. Okay, New South Wales players who represented Australia last night. Well, they're not going to play in the city country.
Nope.
Right. So therefore, you've got pretty much let's call it half of Australia's side.
There were 7.
They're already in. There were 7. So therefore, you've got out of this game. You've probably got a couple of injuries that are sitting on the sideline.
7 players pulled out on Monday in the city country game as well. So that's 14.
And unfortunately, when you get to that point, you can see it coming like the state of origin in the AFL when people didn't put their hand up because they knew it didn't actually count for too much. And that's unfortunately where if they're going to use this game, they're going to have to protect the game by picking players from this match. Rather than going, if you're injured for that match, I'm sorry, but you're not for State of Origin.
Fair enough. Look, I agree they need to do something to sort of make it feel a little more important because every year there's players pulling out left, right, centre. There's all sorts of things. Just
a quick one on that. One thing I did hear of left field, Athletic Australia, or Athletics, the IOC, whatever, whoever's the controlling body of athletics. If you, Darren might be able to elaborate on this, but if you are injured for a event where it is an appearance you're supposed to make, and you pull out of that event, you are then suspended for the next one you've entered into.
Yeah, you're talking about IAAF Grand Prix meets.
You can help me.
Yeah. Look, a lot of those guys are under contract to go to certain places. If you take a look at someone like an Usain Bolt, he's made it pretty clear he's not too keen to go to places like London and that anymore, simply because of the tax regulations and what happens when they go there. So I'm not sure if there's any rules in place about that, although it wouldn't surprise me because, who
was the world's second fastest man who was at the stall gift and pulled out of the stall gift?
That was Asaf Pal, I think, Asaf Pal. He was injured, though.
Yeah, was injured, but then was suspended for the next event he was entered in Melbourne.
Yeah, which makes sense. The only problem that I would have with that is that a country like Australia gets to see people like that so few times. It's a bit different when they're racing over in Europe and stuff.
I'm just saying the theory using city country. City country, if you cannot step up and play for that match.
Lee, that's been my beef, representative football in general. I mean, I've always believed that if you're fit enough to play first grade, you're fit enough to represent. And, if you're going to pull out of a game and then miraculously come good in 3 days' time and play for your club, then you shouldn't be allowed to play for your club.
We got to get back to it, guys. Ethan, one last quick one on this one before I pull it back to Queensland, which we were talking about.
Yeah, just in regards.
That was a while ago.
Always happy to go back to Queensland.
Yeah.
But just in regards to that, I think it's a bit rough to be floating the idea of suspending players for missing a game like City Country. I mean, there's still like 5 weeks to go until Origin, so to say someone can be injured now and quite easily recover before.
But I mean, it's more a case of
Still opportunity.
protecting this game.
You're protecting the game, and you've got to remember that City Country Origin in New South Wales is very important in terms of the promotion of the game in country New South Wales. If you've ever lived in a country town in New South Wales, you know what I'm talking about. They're really full on about them.
Yeah. Fair enough. Look, we'll bring it back, but quickly before we've got to go to a break in a second. One last thing I want to talk about on the Queensland team before we go. There's a guy playing in Queensland Cup this week that played for Australia this time last year in the Anzac Test match. David Taylor. He's playing for the Tweed Seagulls. Where does he stand with Queensland? Like, honestly, Ethan, is he any chance of playing this year? And you never say never, but has he done his dash?
I don't think he's done his dash full stop, but I can't see him forcing his way in this year. We've had like Mal Meninga come out and say, he needs to sort of.
He's been very strong this last week.
He has.
He's not impressed, is he?
Oh, not at all. And some sneaky birds tell me the Origin selectors aren't all that happy with him either, obviously, because he's found himself demoted down to Queensland
Captain
Cup.
Obvious over here.
Yeah, well, there might be something. Anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
But in terms of Taylor making his way back to Origin, he's obviously got the talent. We all know he's got the talent, but he just needs to find the drive to sort of to work hard.
Does he have the style of game to suit State of Origin is my next question, because he had a chance to start in State of Origin State of Origin Game 2 last year, didn't deliver, hasn't really delivered in the Origins that he's played so far. Does he have the style of game and the mindset that suits Origin? Because Origin is a different type of game where you need to play a certain style of straight up and down tough rugby league. A guy like Nate Miles thrives in rugby league. Is Dave Taylor suited? Thrives in State of Origin. Is Dave Taylor suited to State of Origin? His
current mindset, I don't think. You spoke there about Origin's the toughest of the tough, really. Yeah. And I mean, you need to be prepared to do whatever it takes and anything it takes to sort of get your team over the line. I don't think Taylor's in that sort of position at the moment. Yeah. He's got the skill and he's got the talent, but I think it's just a mental thing for him. And if he can get that in the check, he could wreak havoc on footy fields, but
Absolutely.
He just needs to do that first.
He's got all the abilities, but he just needs to get his mindset right. We've got to go to a break now. When we come back, we'll talk through some spots that are up for grabs for the New South Wales team and have a quick look at City Country. So stay with us here on SportzScene.
Do you have a street light that's not functioning correctly outside your property? Perhaps you've noticed a floodlight over a zebra crossing that's not operating. Well, Energex would like you to report it to them by calling 13 12 53 or completing an online form for faulty streetlights on their website at energex.com.au. Remember also that the council has to pay the running cost of all the streetlights, whether they're working or not. So let's get the most for our rateable dollar by reporting the streetlights not functioning to Energex on 13 12 53 or on their website energex.com.au.
Four-wheel driving on Fraser Island can be dangerous. Take sand driving seriously. Don't let your trip turn to tragedy. Slow down, stick to the speed limit. In good conditions, 80 kilometres an hour on the beach and 30 on inland tracks. Slower is safer. Seatbelts save lives. Wear them, it's the law. Police patrol the beach anytime. Make your visit to Fraser fun, not fatal.
Tune into Crossover Country each Thursday night between 7 and 10 p.m. for Name That Tune, when we give you the opportunity to win a $50 voucher from your station sponsor, Woody's Music Store, Shop 61 Logan Central Plaza, Wembley Road, Logan Central.
101 FM. Now it's back to Saturday Sports Scene on 101 FM.
Welcome back to Sports Scene here on 101 FM. It's 34 minutes past 8 here on your station, 101 FM. Next fresh news update coming up at the top of the hour. Just a reminder, all weekend your radio station will be cooking up a storm at Office Works on Crompton Road, Underwood. Come and meet some of the team from 101 FM and grab yourself something delicious to eat and drink and support your voice in the community, your radio station 101 FM. It's Kevin Braysher, Craig Crowley, Ethan James, Lee Hanatscheck and Darren Madigan all with you. Rep Weekend continues here on for the Rugby League segment of the show. Time to talk the New South Wales side now. 5 NRL games left to play. Ethan, what spots are up for grabs? I know the big talking point for a lot of the time has been 5/8. Who in your mind is leading the running for New South Wales 5/8 this year?
Well, for starters, Kev, I think there's about 16 spots up for grabs in the New South Wales team.
There's quite a few, yeah.
Mitchell Pearce has been somehow permanent market in the halfback, which is an issue for another day, maybe. But yeah, in terms of who'll partner him in the halves, I reckon his halves partner there at Sydney, James Maloney, is a massive chance, and I think he'll be the one who they go for at 5/8.
He leads the way, I think, and probably I think Todd Carney's out injured at the moment, but I think they're probably still the 1 and 2 that they're looking towards at the moment. If another thing that gives them a big edge over guys like Sutton and Mullen, for example, is that they're both radar boots. They both kick goals really, really well, so that adds to them as well. I'll throw a curly one at you though. We were talking here with Kurt Gidley off the bench for Australia, and the use of him.
Yep.
We know New South Wales love Kurt Gidley. He's a former captain there. Laurie Daly, the coach, is a big fan. Would they shock us and play Kurt Gidley at 5/8 for New South Wales? A couple of years ago, he was definitely going to be the halfback, but got hurt before the game, and I think Mitchell Pearce came in. Would you be surprised if they pulled a curly one and played Kurt Gidley at 5/8 for New South Wales?
I'd be surprised, but in terms of what the New South Wales selectors throw up, I'm not really all that surprised anymore. They
need to do something.
They need to do something, obviously. But I think, as we were saying before, all this chopping and changing, hurts them in the long run and even in the immediate term, really. I don't think he's their best 5/8 going around, so I don't see the point of squeezing him in there just for the sake of squeezing him in.
They've done it before. We've seen them do it before with that sort of play. Like they've played Mark Gasnier at 5/8 before. They've played Kurt Gidley at fullback ahead of Brett Stewart and Jared Hayne in the past. And we saw last night Kurt Gidley only getting 10 minutes after an injured guy. You assume that they'll want Kurt Gidley in that side. They'll want him in that side. Will they play him? Do you think it'll still be off the bench? They'll play him. What sort of the role of Kurt Gidley in this side? How do you see it panning out? Because I'm a little confused on how they're going to use it.
Yeah, it's about as clear as mud to me, Kev. He has played that sort of bench role for the past in New South Wales. Would they throw him in at fullback even? I mean,
I don't think he'll go ahead of Brett Stewart. I think a lot of I personally think a lot of the side is sewn up. I think Brett Stewart will be fullback. I think Hayne and Morris will be the wingers. Jennings and Morris in the centres. Probably Maloney and Pearce at 5/8. So where we come in, Robbie Farrell will be the hooker. The lock is Paul Gallen. Where does he play? Where does he fit? I'm not sure where he fits, and I know they're big fans of him, and we want to get him in that side.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they could take a leaf out of Queensland's book. A few years ago, we had Cooper Cronk there on the bench, and he came on and he essentially played a bit of back row.
Yep.
I'm sure Gidley could handle that as well.
Absolutely.
So maybe they think of keeping him there on the bench, playing was like a ball playing second row. Although I don't want to give him too many ideas.
Rather than bring him on in place of, say, Robbie Farrell, as they've done in the past with Mick Ennis, like they bring Mick Ennis, he only plays 40 minutes, and they play him, half at hooker. Rather than that, do what Queensland did, say, with Carmichael Hunt and Cooper Cronk and Sean Berrigan in years past. Bring him on as an extra back rower who can play a little bit and just go out there, tackle, and be an extra ball player as well.
I think that's the way to go.
Yeah.
And if I was in their position, well, I'd be backing that in terms of the best sort of makeup for their team. So
fair enough. I like that. That sounds good. A couple other spots I think probably up for grabs. There's a few bench spots and maybe some front rowers, back rowers. Which guys? Front row probably the big position where there's probably a lacking. Could you see them moving Paul Gallen to the front row, using a couple more back rowers, and maybe only using the one prop off the bench or something like that? Like James Tamu is obviously going to be one prop. Who's going to be their other prop?
Yeah, it's a good question. Tim Grant from Penrith, he was there, I think, for all 3 games.
It was second two last year.
Second two last year, yeah. So he's obviously the incumbent, and I think he probably deserves to get another shot there. But as you were saying, they are a bit skinny in the front row department, and I think their strength does lie in the back row. So I think perhaps Tamau, Grant, start Gallen there at lock, and then maybe push Gallen into the front row at stages during the match, and pick a few more back rows on the bench and sort of attack Queensland that way, perhaps.
All right, so which back rowers do we see? Another guy similar to Dave Taylor, a guy who's got a massive body and all the talent, Tony Williams, who's been under huge pressure all season. I know I've seen just with interviews with Laurie Daly in the last couple of weeks, he likes Tony Williams, but he said, I can't justify his spot now. I had him in my side at the start of the year. I can't justify it now, but if he finds form, he'll probably pick him. Can you see Tony Williams turning it around and getting himself into the condition he needs to be to State of Origin in 5 weeks?
Not in 5 weeks, no. And I think in terms of the way some of their other back rows have been playing, he's dropped a fair way down the pecking order there. So guys like Greg Bird, even Ryan Hoffman from the Storm. There's quite a few back rowers there who are above him, I think, at this stage in the sort of selection.
Okay, fair enough.
Selection-wise.
And look, we've seen him do it in the past, but I think State of Origin level we've seen last year, Cooper Cronk did an amazing job on Tony Williams. Every time Tony Williams got the ball, Queenslanders swarmed him because he has this tendency not to run on the ball, he's catch it flat-footed, so they swarm him and not a lot of threat there. So I'd be surprised if Tony Williams is in the team at this stage unless he has a pretty dramatic turn around in form. Any other bolters you can see out of the blue that we haven't touched on, Ethan?
Not so much a bolter, but I think someone who deserves to be playing Origin who didn't play at all last year is Melbourne.
Absolutely.
Probably one of the in-form second rows of the comp at the moment. We were talking about this off air. He's a dangerous type of back rower. You said it yourself, he can hit holes on the edges of the ruck.
Yeah.
And that's something that you need in Origin because there's not many gaps out there. And if you can sneak your way through or find a hole, it's a really valuable skill to have. So I think he should be there. I'd start him in the back row.
Yeah.
And the point you're bringing up there too is probably the Storm being one thing. Is obviously they're playing well, so that brings it. But he knows a lot of the Storm's players, which a lot of them play for Queensland. Sure. The other thing is, when you do look at this, do you start looking at your top sides and start thinking, bringing the players that are at their peak?
Yeah.
Tony Williams, like your example you used in there before, there was a case of it's what he might bring to the table, not what he does. They're living off that a little bit. I think you just got to go with the players that are in touch. Regardless of the fact of who they are, what they are, and how many games they've played, if you're playing good football at a particular time, pick him on his merit because he's up and about, he's going, deserves selection, maybe a bit raw, but geez, if it does pan out and ends up being a player for the future, well, it puts him in a good spot. And I think to play your informed players, especially, in the situation of Hoffman when he's playing against a lot of the Melbourne players that are playing for Queensland, he's got a bit of an upside. He knows their thinking. So it's got to be a heads up on that way, wouldn't it?
I agree. I think he should have been in the side last year, Ryan Hoffman. I think he's been outstanding since coming back from England. He was a regular in the New South Wales and Australian teams before he went overseas. I think he's come back a better player now. So I think Ryan Hoffman should be there. Whether he is or not, we'll have to wait and see. New South Wales have a tendency to throw up some curly selections come Origin time, so we'll have to wait and see what comes there. Very quickly on the City Country, mate, I'll grab, let's say, are there some players who you think need a big game? And quickly a tip before we move on and go shoot through the QRL.
In terms of the City Country, players that need a big game, obviously Tony Williams is probably one that needs a big game there. Maloney is playing 5/8 for Country, so a big game from him will do his case no harm. And in terms of New South Wales being a bit skinny in the front rowers, I think strong games from the props there. Even someone like Willie Mason, who's sort of been touted a bit as maybe coming back into Origin. So I think those are the areas that they'll be looking at the most. As you said before, I think their back line, their outside backs anyway, are fairly sort of settled. But a bit of competition in the forwards is what they'll be looking at, I assume.
I agree, and I think probably James Maloney is the guy to watch for City Country this weekend. He's the guy probably got the most at stake. I'm tipping Country. City had 5 players pull out at the start of the week. Who are you tipping, mate?
I'll have to go with Country as well. They look a bit stronger, a bit more experienced in the backs, and just across the park, I think they should have too much.
Fair enough. We'll have to scoot on now. Go quickly through the Intrust Super Cup, the TV game this weekend. The East Tigers up against the Tweed Seagulls, 2 p.m. Sunday afternoon. That'll be live on Channel 9. Dave Taylor will be running out for the Tweed Seagulls. Mate, how are East going to handle Big Dave Taylor running at them?
We'll wait and see on Sunday, but it should be interesting to watch. If you're out and about, get down to Langlands, of course. First home game of the year for East, so they'll be up for it. But they've named 2 blokes are making their Intrust Super Cup debuts for East, and one of them is a 19-year-old centre who will be marking up on Dave Taylor. So it doesn't get much tougher than that, than marking up on someone who was playing for Australia at this time last year. So we'll see how he goes.
That's a baptism of fire, isn't it?
That's for sure.
Like we said before, Dave Taylor this time last year was the starting back rower in the Australian team. He shouldn't be playing Intrust Super Cup this week. So it's going to be a handful for the East Tigers. The rest of the round, Ipswich Jets up against the Northern Pride at North Ipswich Reserve Saturday this afternoon, 3 p.m, mate.
Yeah, that'll be a good one. Ipswich always tough at home, but the Pride, they've just got so much skill in their team. They've got Ray Thompson, who's played a fair amount of NRL for North Queensland. Yep. He's on the bench, so
he's
that's
back.
an indication of how well their halves and hookers are going. So yeah, hard to look past the Pride.
Absolutely, they've been the standout of the opening round. The Mackay Cutters up against the North Devils, 6 p.m. Virgin Australia Stadium tonight. Should be a good game of footy, this one.
Yeah, I reckon that could actually be the match of the round. Mackay sitting in 5th, North's up in 2nd. So
yeah.
And there's a fair few NRL fringe players in that one. Mackay have got Clint Greenshields playing 5'8", and Norths have got Brisbane Broncos squad member Kurt Baptiste playing at hooker. And he apparently tore them to shreds in the last match he played. So that'll be a tough one. I'm leaning towards Mackay at home, but I reckon that could be the match of the round.
Looking good, that one. Burleigh Bears at home to the South Logan Magpies. South Logan got another win last week. They're going for 3 straight. They've been just really on a resurgent run this year so far. They've been good, the South Logan Magpies. Come up against a Bears side that broke through last week. Good win at home against winner Manly Seagulls, the reigning premiers, of course. You'd think that confidence would come from that. The Bears, they haven't been far off in their 4 losses to start the year. They're all between 2 and 4 point, those losses. Last week, you sort of get the sense they turned the corner in a miserable day that was pouring rain.
How was the weather out there? You were sitting?
It was dreadful. I was sitting outside. There's not a lot of cover there. I was huddled under a little umbrella trying to take notes. Got really cold. My feet were freezing. It was a tough day. It was a tough afternoon to be a footy reporter, which I'll take it because a lot of afternoons it's just you're just covering footy. It's good fun, so I'll take that one. But yeah, I think the Bears at home looking good there to make it 2 straight and jumpstart the rest of their season. Final game of the round: Redcliffe Dolphins up against the Sunny Coast Sea Eagles, 3 p.m. at Dolphin Oval Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, Redcliffe have been a bit strange to start the season. I mean, they're sitting down in 8th, and for a team with the amount of skill, talent, and all that in their squad, it's a bit surprising. They could be in a little bit of trouble, generally speaking, if that's not too vague to say.
Could be in a little bit of trouble, generally speaking.
Yes. Well, I think they're struggling, to be honest. But in terms of this match, they've got too much for the Sunshine Coast. But we'll see how they seem to be saying that every week
with Redcliffe Dolphins. They just haven't quite clicked this year. So we'll wait and see. And Sunshine Coast did upset them this time last year in the same fixture.
Good point.
Wait and see what turns out with that one. Should be a good round of Intrust Super Cup. We're going to have to leave the Rugby League there. We've run out of time there. We're going to have to go to a break. When we come back, we'll talk Adam Scott being the first Australian to break through and win the Masters. And we'll also talk the A-League Grand Final coming up this Sunday afternoon. So stay with us here on SportzScene.
Could be in a little bit of trouble.
Sometimes I know he sings.
What happens when a young rock and roller from the wrong side of the tracks falls in love with a rich man's daughter?
He's wonderful. He loves me and I love him.
I'm not rubbish, Mr. Burns. When poverty walks in the door, love flies out the window.
Come and ride the rock and roll roller coaster that is the world premiere run of new British musical Billy Bucket at the Crete Street Theatre, Beenleigh, from April 26th to May 11. Get your tickets online from BeenleighTheatreGroup.com or call 3287 1377. Be there or be square.
Life. Life is for living, so live it. Life. Life is for giving, so give it. Giving blood is cool, needing it isn't. Red Cross. Give a little. Life is for living. Life is for giving. Help save lives. Please give blood.
Did you know that there are over 1,000 orphaned orangutans living in care centres in Borneo and Sumatra because their habitats have been destroyed and their mothers killed? You can help one of these orphans in need by adopting from the Orangutan Project. From just $55 a year, you can provide all the care and nourishment to successfully rehabilitate and hopefully one day return them to the wild. Visit orangutan.org.au for more information.
101 FM.
And now it's back to Saturday Sports Scene on 101 FM.
Welcome back to Sports Scene here on 101 FM. It's Kevin Braysher, Craig Crowley, Ethan James, Lee Hanatscheck and Darren Madigan all with you. It's 11 minutes to 9 o'clock. That's when your next fresh news update is coming up at the top of the hour. It's now time to talk the A-League Grand Final coming up this Sunday afternoon at Allianz Stadium, 4 p.m. It is the top two teams at the end of the season. They've made it all the way to the end. That's the way you like to see it in Grand Finals, 1 versus 2. The Western Sydney Wanderers up against the Central Coast Mariners. They've met 3 times this year. They've got 1 win apiece and a draw, so 2 evenly matched sides, the 2 best teams in the competition. Should be a cracking grand final. The Wanderers unbeaten in their last 13 matches. There's 1 draw in amongst all of that, but they've been very, very good for a very long time now, the Wanderers. And the Mariners seem to have rediscovered some of their best after a good win last week. A bit of a patchy run to end the season, but they're back in their best now. The Mariners, this will be a great one. Darren, Central Coast, they've been to 3 grand finals, lost them all. This time, is it going to be 4th time lucky for the Mariners? Can they break through against, I think, the team, everyone outside of the Central Coast Mariners is kind of hoping will win this because it's the great fairy tale story.
They most certainly are, yeah. It's the feeling out there is everyone does want this team to get up finally and win a grand final, but gee, you couldn't pick 2 more evenly matched teams. You've just been through the stats. I mean, it's 1-1-1, and look, they're both missing players. Hersey is a huge loss for the Wanderers, but I think Shinji Ono could step up as we would expect him to and do some amazing things. Look, I'm going to stay on the bandwagon, to put it briefly. I think it's probably about a 2-1 result to the Wanderers, but gee, this is a really tough one because the Central Coast Mariners probably played last week much better than I thought they would. And I didn't think they were going to come through, and given the amount of football that they've had to play. So they've done an amazing job. They are certainly match fit, but I've been on the Wanderers most of the season, and I'm going to stay with them.
Fair enough. Look, they've been on such a good run in the last few weeks. They do lose Hersey, as you say. They haven't won a game without him this season, but he's also been present for the last 13 weeks straight where they've won all these games non-stop. So yeah. I think they're a different side to what they were earlier in the season. Last time he would have been missing. So, and we saw last week the Shinji Ono factor. That goal he scored against the Roar was magic. And when you got a guy who can do that, it makes, big games are won with big moments by big players, and they've got the big player in this game, don't they?
They really do. And look, I'll go so far as to say this could be the single most important domestic football match in the history of football in this country, soccer in this country, because it's been such a wonderful season. They've had good crowds. They've had this team come through and perform most of the fairy tale. They've only got one thing left to do, and if they manage to pull it off, and they're playing in a pretty decent-sized stadium as well for this one, anything is possible from next year onwards. So, their PR people, you would hope, would just be sitting there. They'd have everything in place, wondering what they're going to do for next year and ready to rock and roll, because this sport is, we say it all the time, it's ready to take off, and I'm not game to try and say that one again because we've been disappointed too many times. But we just have so many things in place ready for soccer to take off. If they don't pull it off this time, there's just no hope. There really isn't.
Look, mate, there'll be 45,000 people at Allianz Stadium. It's been probably the highest profile season the A-League's had. It's delivered on all fronts. If it goes off without a hitch with a classic grand final this Sunday afternoon, you're right. It feels like it's a sport that's ready to really explode across the country in popularity. Like, it's already clearly huge in the Western Sydney and in Melbourne and other parts of the country, but it does feel like it's ready to explode. Craig, you had an interesting point we were talking off air in regards to the grand final situation here in the A-League.
Yeah, look, Darren, I don't know what you think about this, but it seems strange. It seems like a bit of an anticlimax, the grand final. I think, as I was saying off air, it's a bit of an Australian thing, grand finals. Soccer seems to be governed by pretty similar to the EPL, whereas the one they're really after is to win the Premier's Plate. And, they made a very big thing of winning that. And after that, it's sort of been a case of, what we do, win this game. Yeah, it's not over yet. But it never has, for want of a better word, never reached the crescendo of a grand final. I think that's the most important thing in Australian sport, is to play in the grand final, not to be minor premiers. And in this situation, it seems to be the governing prize, I suppose. So it seems a bit strange in that way, but it'll be interesting to see how it's attended and how it's received.
Yeah, look, Australasian and the North American continent are really the two places in the world that make a big deal about finals. I mean, as you quite rightly point out, it's usually about who finishes on top of the ladder wins the premiership. The other thing you've got to remember too, though, is that the premiership played, I think if memory serves, it decides whether you get into the Asian Champions League for the following season. So that is a really big deal, especially financially in that as well. So I can understand why they'd be jumping up and down a bit about that too. But you've got to remember though too that there's a lot of foreign-born players who have known football exactly as you have pointed it out. You're used to finishing on top of the ladder and winning a premiership. So, all of a sudden they come to Australia and it's all about finals. And the only time they play finals are usually in cup matches. So, yeah, it's probably a bit of an unusual one for them. But it's just the way we are in Australia and North America. That's the two regions of the world that play finals.
One of the things there is that in everything that I know of that when you're talking about that is Australia and America know how to turn sport into a show.
Yep.
Whereas a lot of the rest of the world, it is sport, and that's simply what it is. It's sport. Whereas America and Australia, the two countries in the world that go, let's turn this into a show. And it's NASCAR, it's Super Bowl, it's everything on the, there's two grand final dates.
Oh, that is changing though in Europe though. I mean, if you take a look at, especially with the Champions League in Europe, just even down to things like the post-match press conferences. I was watching one this morning where they've got a little 7 or 8 inch screen sitting in front of where the mic flag would normally be, and that just rolls like those digital photo frames. And it just runs the logos of their sponsors off. You get 3 seconds of, say, Nike and then 3 seconds of Real Madrid's team sponsor and things like that. They've got all these little things that they're very, very clever with now, especially in football. And you're also finding in cycling, too, in Europe that they're doing that so much better. So I think things are changing over in that part of the world.
Yeah, what I know for sure is that Queensland teams won the last 2 A-League grand finals. So the grand finals, what I pay attention to. I'm tipping the Wanderers in this one. What are we else talking, guys? Who are we tipping?
I'm going Mariners. I reckon they deserve it. Three losses, they deserve a win. I think the Wanderers already had a win. They've already won.
Yeah, can't jump off the bandwagon. 2-1 Wanderers.
We don't like Shingy. We love him. Go the Wanderers.
We do.
Go United.
Ethan, who are you going with?
Sentimental favourites, Western Sydney Wanderers. I just want to see how their supporters react. They'll go nuts.
That's the one. They certainly will.
Hopefully in a good way.
Of course.
That's it. And quickly, before we move on to the rest of the show, a quick reminder. All weekend, your radio station will be cooking up a storm at Office Works on Crompton Road, Underwood. Come and meet some of the team from 101 FM and grab yourself something delicious to eat and drink. Support your voice in the community, your radio station, 101 FM. It is now 4 minutes to 9 with the next fresh news update coming up at the top of the hour. We've got to talk Adam Scott, guys. He's first Aussie to break through and win the Masters over there at Augusta. What a moment it was, and what a moment it was when he's walking off the course and some bloke yelled Queenslander at him. That was brilliant. Look, Australians have been close so many times before. 8 times an Australian has come runner-up. Adam Scott himself was runner-up 2 years ago. And Craig, like I said to Darren before the show, Craig, that if there was a guy that I wanted to break through and do it, Adam Scott was the guy that I'm really glad was the one who did it, because in a lot of ways he's been the face of Australian golf for the last 10 years.
I think more so than that, he has been a great face of Australian golf, but the thing is, the way he capitulated at the British Open, I think, he was so close, and everyone felt so bad for him after that I thought, geez, I hope he doesn't do it this time, and he didn't, and I think that was the saving grace of this. Not so much, of course, the fact that he won, but the fact that he held his strength, kept his game together and actually, and won it. And that putt on the 18th, just to, to really get him into a playoff situation and leading at that stage, that was the most significant, I think. One thing we've probably lost sight of the fact, and it'd be interesting to think how far it took it, is, the Jason Day, his efforts there, and I forget the other guy's name.
Mark Leishman.
Sorry. I wonder how much that helped Adam Scott, having some countrymen there up in the leader. They might have just been bouncing off each other.
They were.
If one of us don't win it, if I don't win it, I hope my mate wins it. Yeah. And it's good instead of just being out there by yourself. So
that's what was happening.
We've got a minute and a half until the news, mate, but it's been a bit in a lot of ways, it's been a bit of a golden era in Australian golf. A lot of guys towards that top 10, but it's so good to see someone finally break through and win the Masters, and the first guy to win a major since Jeff Ogilvy back in 2006.
Yeah, make no mistake, this is a golden era of Australian golf. We've never had so many players competing for a win on a weekly basis so often. So, it's been a wonderful thing. He is a wonderful young champion. He's got a wonderful nature about him with the media publicly. The fact that he did not forget his mentor and hero, the Great White Shark. It was just everything about the playoff, the speech afterwards. It was perfect. He just did everything right. And for me, as I said earlier, our America's Cup moment for the century so far.
Can I just ask the panel, where was this bloke born?
Gold Coast.
Adelaide.
Was it Adelaide?
Adelaide
I know
He's based on the coast, though.
I should have known that's why you're bringing it up. I was like, I know
Knew the answer as soon as you asked the question.
That's all I can say. Adelaide born Adam Scott.
Fair enough. If I'm always bringing it back to Queensland, it's only fair you to always bring it back to Adelaide somehow. Look, we've got to go to the news now. It's been an amazing achievement there for Adam Scott at the end of what was a very dramatic tournament. All sorts of controversy with Tiger Woods.
Richardson and Wrench, Springwood Residential, Southside Commercial and Strata Management Brisbane is family owned and operated and have been established in Logan for over 25 years. They'll service all your residential and commercial property management and body corporate management needs. Their professional staff are friendly and care about their clients. R&W are more than happy to provide a free quote for managing your property or body corporate. Call our sponsor today on 3808 8878 or see them at 8 Dennis Road, Springwood.
Taking a look at your weather update for today is fine and mostly sunny with light to moderate west to southwesterly winds, fresh and gusty at times during the afternoon and evening, heading for a maximum of 26 at the city and 25 at the Bayside. It's currently 17 degrees. UV alert is from 8:50 a.m. till 2:40 p.m. The index predicted to reach 7, which is high. Forecast for tomorrow is fine and mostly sunny with a maximum of 25 and a minimum of 12. That brings you up to date with all your news and weather. Stay with us now for the second hour of Sports Scene.
Your station, 101 FM, with Saturday Sports Scene.
Welcome back to Sports Scene here on 101 FM. It's 3 minutes past 9 on your station. Kevin Braysher, Craig Crowley from the AFL Queensland Hall of Fame, Ethan James from the QRL, Lee Hanatscheck from the Australian Karting Association, and Sports Scene founder Mr. Darren Madigan, all here with you, taking you through all the latest and greatest issues in the world of sport. It's been a big show so far. We've already talked rugby league, the A-League Grand Final, Adam Scott winning the Masters. It's now time to go into the AFL segment, and there's been some big news this week with the AFL. The Melbourne Demons, as if they needed some more bad news during the week, Craig. It's been, revealed with the 7:30 report. ABC revealed during the week that their team doctor had communications with Stephen Dank. He's basically, he who shall not be named, essentially in the AFL at the moment, the guy. So, Demetrio is not happy. The club has stood down the doctor last night. He's, what's going on, mate?
Oh, look, the thing that's probably made it so bad for the Melbourne Footy Club, every club had a meeting. The AFL had an opportunity, and everyone had an opportunity to sort of air their laundry.
Yeah.
And Melbourne's, even though they knew they were involved in this, decided to say nothing. And that's what probably got the AFL so upset. And it's the fact that they had their opportunity to bring it out, they said nothing, and now it's come to the fore. Regardless of the fact that we don't know if it's on the illegal banned substance list or not, the fact is they could have come clean at that stage and gone as a group. Obviously Essendon have come out. They've put their hand up straight away. And obviously there would be other sides that would probably have said something. Melbourne decided to say nothing.
Yeah.
Like, if there was not enough turmoil at this stage from the Melbourne Football Club, this is their chance to sort of say, hey, yep, we did it, we're involved, let's clear it up as quick as we can.
The thing with me from the start of this whole thing, it seemed to me that Demetrio and the AFL have put themselves between ASADA and the clubs and working with them. They're working for the benefit of the clubs, and the club has done the wrong thing by the guys who have put themselves out to help them. That's, to me, from the outside looking, that's the way it seems. Is that a fair comment?
Yeah, you're 100% right. They're looking after their own brand, which is smart work from your hierarchy, and we've seen the situation in the NRL with Cronulla, and you've seen the situation with Essendon. We've spoken about how well they've been, or differently, the way they've managed it differently. And I just think now we've got Melbourne that have just bucked the system.
Yeah,
that's as simple as that. We're here. The AFL said we're here for everyone. We'll help you out where we can. All we need to know is who's doing what. and they decided not to say anything. Now they've sort of left themselves out to dry. Like, they would have just formatted with the Essendon Football Club. They would have done exactly the same sort of thing.
Yeah.
They would have been in the same pie, and they would have done it all as one unit. But now it's come out. It's just ridiculous. And look, you don't know what's happening at the hierarchy at Melbourne. I don't know why, in God's name, they wouldn't put up their hand and admit to it. Because if it's not illegal, well, they've got nothing to worry about, so they can put their hand up. But it's just ludicrous.
Did it help them?
No. No, it's
quite
right.
simple. Like, come on, like. And the other thing is that how much did the club know?
Yeah,
that's the other thing. Is it something the club doctor hasn't told the rest of the club because he knew that he was doing something wrong?
I think that's
There's
the way they're
so
going to
many
play
if
it.
buts, maybes in this scenario. But as you say, if the Melbourne Football Club did know something's going on, they should have put their hand up and go, "Yep, let's talk about this."
Well, it was reported last night that their doctor, not the current club doctor who's just resigned, prior to that, the club doctor, he was the guy, I think he was there for about 20-odd years. He was the one who they all went through. He didn't like the change in system, so he actually left because they changed their process to how it's managed. So it seems to me is that only a certain amount of people know exactly what's going on, and they let that to be with the sports science, the conditioning player, and a lot of people don't know. And I think that at the end of the day, whether the coach knew or not, he's stupid if he doesn't.
Yeah,
that's ridiculous. If he's running the club, if him and the club president or the director of coaching, whatever the case may be, don't know what's going on underlying, fool them. Fool them.
Agree. Darren, when I was a little kid growing up, my parents used to always tell me, if you've done something, admit to it and it'll be better for you. But if you lie to me and we find out later, it's going to be worse. Is this what's happening with Melbourne?
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, you take a look at the look on Andrew Demetriou's face over the last 2 or 3 days when he's been bailed up, and he is absolutely furious. You can just see it. The questions, if we're led to believe that the questions have been very straight up, they've been very direct back then to all the clubs, and those clubs that haven't been fair income, and it looks like Melbourne may be one of those. It doesn't matter whether it's legal or illegal. I mean, if you haven't been fair income with the CEO and the hierarchy of the governing body of the sport, gee, it's really a bad look, and I wonder too whether the doctor's going to be taking the whole rap for all of this.
You've been very, very naughty boy. You're grounded for 2 weeks. No TV.
It's starting to look like that, isn't it? In terms of the doctors, really, they're saying, okay, we can blame it on the doctor here by the looks of things. I mean, that's how it sort of looks from the outside. It's just a really, really bad look, and it just makes what is a really horrible situation even worse, and especially for a club that is in big trouble. The other thing too is I'm starting to wonder. We have a lot of broadcasters and journalists involved in the sport. At fairly high levels that are actually involved with football clubs, and some of them are starting to come into play. And I'm just wondering whether it may be time for some of those people to sort of step aside for a little while. Because, we used to go on about Eddie calling his own club's games on a Friday night and all that sort of stuff, but this is a lot more serious with a lot of other certain people hosting certain shows and all that sort of stuff. And when these things come up, you can just see the look on their face. It's like, oh, geez, I'm going to have to address this.
Yeah. Craig, any last word on this before we have to move on?
Look, I don't think you can do anything. What we've got to do is we can't actually say too much because we don't really know the outcome. I think we sit down and wait, as we did with Essendon,
right,
and get the guts of the story and find out what's happening.
Yeah, the bottom line with it is we don't know until all the results come out, but they have not helped themselves at all the way they've conducted. That's the point we're making here on Sports Scene. It's 10 minutes past 9. Kevin Braysher, Craig Crowley, Ethan James, Lee Hanatscheck and Darren Madigan all with you. We'll go through the rest of the AFL round now. Last night, of course, Craig, Geelong and Sydney played a cracking game of football. 19-10, 124, 16-7, 103. Geelong getting up at the SCG. Tommy Hawkins, Stephen Motlock both kicked 3 goals. Jared McVeigh, 3 goals for the Swans. How'd you see it, mate?
Oh, look, it was just a great game of football to watch. It was a shootout. Whether that's a great thing for coaches, I don't think it would be because your defensive mechanisms don't seem to be too strong. But it was the cleanliness of the disposal, I think, was the thing that got me. Every time they had a shot on goal, it seemed to just score. And that's brilliant.
I think one of the things also there, Craig, is I was sitting there watching the game thinking, why is this so free flowing? And there's probably a good reason for it. Is 3 letters, SCG. Because of the size of the ground, you can basically kick it from centre forward, and you know you're going to get somewhere near the goal line.
Yeah, it's about 2.5 kicks long.
Yeah, the fact of the matter is there was such cleanliness in their disposal, and it allowed that free flowing game. And you've seen as soon as the game had a stoppage, it just flooded.
Yep.
You know that was one of the bad things about our game now is you just see this flooding aspect. But whereas last night it was just over the top.
Oh, it kept it moving. And look, the other thing about it too, don't lose sight of the fact that the SCG being small. Last weekend, 2 kicks and it's a goal in the MCG. 12 seconds, one end to the other. It can be happening. I think it's a style of football. Look, I think at times the new rule's stupid about the diving in and taking the legs, but I also see a lot of players holding their feet. So they're on the ground and running, they're moving, they're consistently flowing the ball. The amount of ball ups now are gone. So it's a more constant game. The coach's structure. We don't go around the boundary lines like Mick Malthouse did with Collingwood. They are going through the corridor. They're taking the easiest way home. People, when they kick out now, they kick out down the corridor, get it out of the area. And they're just getting numbers to the contest. They're moving the ball quickly, and the standard of football is good because of that. So we're not trying to divert around and cheat around. You very rarely see the kicks back in the back half now. We want to move forward, and it's a great thing for the game. It's a free-flowing game. It's an entertaining game because of this, and I think you'll get more scores, and if they can continually convert, you'll see some big scores during the course of the year.
Geelong's still unbeaten at the top of the ladder now. In the NRL, everyone's saying Manly are getting old. Their time's passed. Similar sort of talk with the Geelong Cats. Here they are, 4 from 4 to start the season. Are they going better than you expected, Craig?
Well, they are, because basically, I think we spoke about that they've got some old heads, but we didn't really take into account the amount of blokes that have actually got 25 to 30 games in them now, and they're really starting to come to their own. And the funny thing about it, while Geelong were up and going and playing the older players that have just recently retired, these guys were consistently playing good football at a lower level and couldn't get the opportunity. Well, now they've got the opportunity and they want to be involved in this club, and they're playing extremely well. So I just reckon they've got a good list.
That's one thing I think Geelong have done very, very well is they've sort of bred in a couple, 3 or 4 players each year who have come in. They're now at that point where you've got the old guys who are on at the upper end of their career. You've got guys who have been played, 15, 20 games, 30 games, whatever it is, but have got that experience at that level. So they're all him. I mean, Tom Hawkins is a hot and cold player, but when he's on, just amazing.
Oh, he's pivotal in their group.
He's just amazing. Selwood, another example, he's just a great leader. Great leader. They've got these players who just continually step up, and they will be a serious contender this year.
Looking good to start the season. One more game before we go to a break, guys. This afternoon, 1:45 p.m. at Aurora Stadium. Hawthorn Hawks up against the Freo Dockers.
Hawthorn, and without Pavlich, I fear for Freo for the next 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah.
But the way Freo play, they strangle sides. If they get that mentality going, but I don't think they can stop their forward thrust that the Hawthorn have got. They're a great attacking side. They dispose of the ball. The way they ran over Collingwood last week was enormous. Hodge playing the football he's playing. Well, they're going to be really, really good. But you don't know with Freo. They can choke you up and slow it down and really control the game. So that's their biggest thing. If they can control the game.
Yeah, I think you nailed it on the head there. Last night we had a free-flowing game. 2 sides who wanted to actually kick goals. Freo's not one of those sides, especially without Pavlich.
Yeah, and they're playing at Launceston too.
Fair enough. Look, we've got to go to a break now. When we come back from the break, we'll go through the rest of the AFL round and talk some NEAFL as well. So stay with us here on SportzScene.
Life is for living, so live it. Life is for giving, so give it. Giving blood is cool, needing it isn't. Red Cross. Give a little. Life is for living. Life is for giving. Help save lives. Please give blood.
If you want the latest and best movies on the big screen, plus a delicious morning tea, all for a very low admission price, then you must come along to the 101 FM monthly movies at station sponsor, the Hyperplex Cinemas Loganholme. Keep listening for details of the next screening and then join us, Logan City's 101 FM.
Hi, I'm Jill Robinson from Animals Asia, a group dedicated to ending bear farming in China and Vietnam. After 2 decades of rescuing bears and providing critical information regarding their appalling physical and psychological health, we're proud to see the Chinese public rising up against this cruel and unnecessary industry at last. Join us to end bear farming. Call 1-800-666-004 today.
Be listening to Focus on the Family at 2:30 each weekday, sponsored by Sunny Faces Early Learning Centre. Call 3209 3800.
101 FM.
You're listening to Saturday Sports Scene on 101 FM.
Welcome back to Sports Scene here on 101 FM. It's Kevin Braysher, Craig Crowley, Ethan James, Lee Hanatscheck and Darren Madigan, all with you, taking you through to the top of the hour with your next fresh news update coming up at 10 o'clock. It's currently 17 minutes past 9. Just a reminder that all weekend your radio station will be cooking up a storm at Office Works on Crompton Road, Underwood. Come and meet some of the team from 101 FM and grab yourself something delicious to eat and drink and support your voice in the community, your radio station 101 FM. It's time to scoot through the rest of the AFL round, and there's a certain mob that haven't lost a game yet, Darren. I think you might want to talk about in this game. Richmond versus Collingwood, 2:30 PM at the MCG this afternoon.
Just a little bit. It's the big blockbuster, Richmond, Collingwood, and tell you what, 80,000 plus at the MCG. It's a traditional Saturday afternoon match at 2:10 at the G in front of 80,000. I mean, does it get any better than this? I mean, the boys are on, when I say the boys, the Tigers are on fire at the moment. Pretty much everybody...
Boys!
Everybody... Everybody is doing their job at the moment, which is all you can ask for. Even Jack's kicking goals as well. We should also point out there's a milestone there as well with Collingwood. Dane Swan will play his 200th match, and that's a great effort from him as well. But this match should be an absolute beauty. I'm staying on the Tigers bandwagon, as you would expect.
Surprise. Look, it's an even money bet. The bookies have got it, $1.90 each for this one. Craig, can you split the sides?
Look, I think we're all, no disrespect, Darren, I think we're all waiting for Richmond to fall, but the way they're playing at the moment, it doesn't look like it's going to happen. They've reshuffled their side, but I put Collingwood on top of my ladder at the start of the year, and nothing's changed my mind, even though the situation with Hawthorn last week.
You and I had Port Adelaide as wooden spooners, though, as well.
Oh, yeah, we don't know, but
we're doing well, aren't we?
Yeah, but I just still reckon Collingwood have been decimated a little bit with injuries, but they're starting to get the blokes back. But you're right, it's going to be a great game. It'll be a real litmus test for Richmond to find out where they're at. And whenever you play Collingwood, you really do get an indicator of where you're situated in that particular year.
Yeah. This is Richmond's test. I think it's going to be a big one. It's the two traditional rivals down in Melbourne. Anyone who plays against Collingwood is really a rival down in Melbourne. They're a Melbourne club.
It's our second big one after Carlton. Yeah.
Yeah, but seriously, I think Collingwood will put up a good fight. Injuries may hamper them a little bit. If Richmond get over this, we know they're a serious deal and serious contender. And if they get smashed, well, we know where they sit. They'll be ninth again. They'll fade and finish ninth yet again, Darren. Sorry.
And look, the AFL will be salivating at this. I mean, they've been waiting for this part of the Big Four, with the others, of course, being Collingwood, Carlton, and Essendon. They've been waiting for Richmond to get their act together for a long time to pull the big crowds. And Saturday afternoon, MCG, 80,000 plus. If they do manage to have a win, it's good for footy to actually have all four teams in the Big Four doing well in Victoria, because it really does bring the money in.
There's a word I think you forgot in there, Darren, was bandwagon. Richmond fans will get on the bandwagon. They have already. They've won 4 games in a row. Can they make it 5? Well, the bandwagon will just go troppo and run the wheels off it if they do.
Fans everywhere love a good bandwagon and a winning team, so there's no doubt about that. Next game on the list, St Kilda up against Essendon, 4:40 PM at Etihad Stadium. Look, Essendon been under all sorts of pressure all season, but they just keep delivering 3 from 3. Look, will they make it 4?
Oh, look, I can't say why not. The biggest, obviously, the greatest thing about this particular round, there's something in every game.
Yeah.
And this situation with Goddard, to see that's how it's going to transpire, it's nearly as good as waiting for Kurt Tippett when they play the Crows. The Swans play the Crows. It's going to be interesting. I don't think anyone is, begrudges Brendan Goddard for doing what he done, but there'll be some fans that might not see eye to eye with it. So it's going to be interesting to see. In saying that, Essendon are on top of their game. They're running on top of the ground. They're playing a good brand of football. The loss of Ryder is probably going to hurt them a little bit, but they have got good backup ruckman. So really interesting. St Kilda only just won their first game last week against GWS. Their form early season hasn't been great, and I don't think their form's been great. So I expect Essendon to win and win well.
Fair enough. Gold Coast Suns up against Port Adelaide. That's tonight, 7:40 p.m. at Metricon Stadium. Lee, I'll come to you for this one. The showdown last week. Port came out on top. They are unbeaten so far to start the season. Craig and Darren gave them no chance at the start of the year. Can they get a win against the Suns, or will the Suns be too good at home?
Firstly, was there a game that Port played last week? I blanked that out of my memory.
You made a little bit of a big deal about it last week. I don't know if you remember.
I think the Suns... we spoke off air about the fact that the Suns now actually believe in themselves. They believe they can win every time they go on the field. They get disappointed when they do lose.
Yeah.
Like Richmond is to Collingwood at the moment, this is a bit of a test for Port. They're away. They played their first few games, 3 out of the last 4 games at home, I think it was. They're coming up against the Suns side who are starting to believe in themselves.
Yeah.
If the Suns can go over Port, it'll be a huge shot in the arm for the club. Ken Hinckley, who was a former assistant coach at the Suns, is now the main coach head coach at Port Adelaide. So it's going to be an interesting game. I'm going to tip the Suns. Just a bit of an upset. Port will definitely go in his favourites, but I just think the Suns have, after last week, really want to make amends. And get over the line and get some runs.
Yeah, I like the Suns at home too. They always tend to find a way to lift in front of their home supporters. The next game also being played tonight, the West Coast Eagles up against Carlton. Darren, I'll go to you for this one. Carlton yet to get a win. This will be 7:40 p.m. at standard time over at Patterson Stadium. Can Carlton break the duck? They've been under a lot of pressure.
No, not at Subiaco Oval. I don't think they're going to break the duck over there against West Coast. I think it's going to be relatively comfortable for the Coasters, and I think Mick Malthouse has got to be asking himself a few questions privately at the moment about their performance so far this season. But I think West Coast Eagles at Subiaco Oval. Yeah, I'm certainly going for them. The other thing too is Michael Riccitelli for the Gold Coast Sun plays his 150th, and one we did forget in the Sydney Swans game that was played last night, and this is a really big deal. Mike Pike, he's a Canadian rugby international who was lured over to play Australian football, and he played his 50th game last night. So that's a great achievement for a guy who never knew anything about our game not that long ago.
On ya, Pikey.
And he's one of the great stories in the AFL, isn't he? It's terrific.
He really is. Also, Andrew Embley plays his 243rd game for the West Coast Eagles this week since his debut in 2001. That brings him level with Dean Kemp in 7th spot on the all-time list.
Awesome. Next game, this will be a Sunday afternoon at the MCG. Can't imagine the MCG getting too full for this one, but the Melbourne Demons up against the GWS Giants. Been a rough week, been a rough season so far for the Melbourne Demons, Craig. Can they turn it around this week against the Giants?
This is more likely to be a soccer score, I think. It's probably a 0-0 draw.
Right.
I think the Bye will win.
Look,
send the doctor out to play.
For every reason, we shouldn't be really so cynical about it.
Yeah.
It's just, you've got a side that wants to win. Both sides want to win. A team that's growing, just been born, and it's a side that's been here forever, and they're at the same sort of point. It's quite disheartening, really, and it'll be interesting to see how Melbourne really do come out and play. Look, after their first half against West Coast last week, I think they had a lot to hang their hat on.
Yeah,
but they still capitulated after that, and they need to be more competitive now. And as a player of the Melbourne Football Club, you must be thinking to yourself, where does it stop?
I just hope the staff at the MCG actually get out from their turnstiles and come out and sit in the stands to actually double the crowd.
That's the one. It's going to be a tough one. It'll be a tough one to draw, that one last, first, second last. They're both struggling. But the next game of the weekend, mate, Adelaide versus the Western Bulldogs, 2:50 p.m. at Eastern Standard Time at Amy Stadium. Lee, can the Crows bounce back from the loss last week?
They've got to. Simple, they've got to. Against Western Bulldogs, I think Adelaide are like $1.20 favourites and Western Bulldogs are $6 or something stupid like that. I actually haven't seen a Western Bulldogs game this year, so I don't know how bad they're playing, but from all reports, they're not too bad, but, you know, it's Adelaide have got to win. They're at home. They've got to get a win on the board.
Yeah, it's $1.12, plays $6.25. So, yeah, heavy favourites there, the Adelaide Crows, to win that game. Last match of the round, Darren, I'll go to you with this one.
This is
Melbourne
huge.
up against the Brisbane Lions, 4:40 p.m. at Etihad Stadium.
Okay, Sudanese player Madjak makes his debut for North Melbourne.
Madjak happens.
Yes, I've watched him a bit in the VFL, which you can watch on the ABC. It's ungodly hours of the morning, late in the week. And this guy has a presence like a few players I've seen around. He's just a huge man, and you know, he's learning our game, and you know, hopefully he'll have a good first up game. But I just hope North, you know, stick with him and keep teaching him the game, because with his body type and his size, and his athleticism on top of all of that, his capabilities, if he learns to play the game really well, he could do anything in his career. But it's a great story, and he's finally making his debut. He's played a few NAB Cup games, and as I mentioned before, he's played for the VFL side as well. Brisbane Lions at Etihad Stadium. Yeah, I'm still tipping North Melbourne to win that match.
Fair enough. Quick look at the ladder before we move on to the NEAFL. The Geelong out on top after that win last night, followed up by Essendon, Port Adelaide, Richmond, Sydney Swans, Hawthorn, Freo, Collingwood. That's the top 8. Then we got St Kilda, West Coast, Adelaide, Western Bulldogs, Gold Coast Suns, Brisbane Lions, Carlton, North Melbourne, GWS, and Melbourne bringing up the rear. Move now to the 5th round of the NEAFL. Just a quick look at results from last week. Southport getting up over Hills Eagles, 115-99, mate, down in Sydney. Good win for the club.
Yeah, it was. These cross-conference games are always pretty hard because you don't know what to expect. So we took a few young guys with us to give them a bit of experience, and they learnt something out of it, and they had a good win.
Absolutely. Aspley getting up 79-77 over Broadbeach. Labrador up 88-58 over Mount Gravatt. Brisbane Lions gave it to the Gold Coast Suns, 180-70, and Morningside 111-65 over Redlands. Any surprises in those results, mate?
Yeah, probably the Morningside Redlands game, I suppose. Redlands, they've been travelling all right, and obviously finalists last year. So for Morningside to do as well as they did last week was a good indicator of where their club's at.
Yeah, fair enough. Through the rest of the round, for round 5, all being played today, these games. Queanbeyan up against Aspley, that's 11:45 a.m. at DFP.
Yeah, well, once again, it's a cross-conference game. Queanbeyan are on top of the ladder over there, and Aspley are really travelling well. So that's going to be a great game to watch. Obviously, I'll stick to the local boys, and I think Aspley will win there.
Yep, cool. Morningside up against Sydney Uni, another cross-conference game there. That'll be at Esplanade Oval, 1 p.m. this afternoon.
Yeah, Morningside, like after last week's game, once again, another cross-conference game. So Morningside, they've probably got their stuff together, which is important. They do well at Esplanade Oval, their home ground. So, yeah, we'll stick with Morningside on that one.
That's it. Brisbane Lions coming off a big win last week. They faced Broadbeach, 1:30 p.m. at Cooperoo.
Yeah, well, Broadbeach have sort of been, we got them a couple of weeks back in the wet, but they bounced back against Aspley last week and were really competitive. So it's going to be interesting. It all depends what the Lions get and how many players they've got available. So you'd have to say the Lions on this one.
That's the one. Redlands up against the Gold Coast Suns. Oh, before we move away from the Brisbane Lions, did I read right? Simon Black and Brent Staker are both going to be running out for the reserves this week.
I didn't know about that, but
I saw that scrolling across the screen on Fox News this morning.
What you'll probably get, they'll probably get limited time. They'll probably play half a game of football, if that, just to basically get the cobwebs out and just to get a kick.
Get some runs into the legs, exactly. Redlands up against the Gold Coast Suns at Cashes Park, 1:30 p.m.
As same as the Lions, obviously the Suns sort of situation, they seem like they're a little bit depleted. The senior side's getting around, but there is a few injuries there, so you'd probably go with Redlands on that one.
Swan in the final match of the round, NT Thunder up against Labrador, 3:30 p.m. at Traeger Park.
Very, very hard. NT probably disappointing in the Foxtel Cup game last week, even though they did leave a few players out. Labrador aren't up and going at the moment either, so they were grand finalists last year. NT Thunder very hard to beat up in the north, so we probably go with NT.
That's it. Mount Gravatt and Southport with the byes this week. Take a look at the ladder after 4 rounds. Southport out on top, undefeated, 4 from 4. Brisbane Lions in 2, Morningside in 3, Aspley followed up by NT Thunder, Labrador, Gold Coast Suns, Broadbeach, Redlands and Mount Gravatt. That's a quick wrap of all the NEAFL and as the AFL as well. We've got to go to a break now. When we come back, it's time to talk some motorsport. We've got some F1, we've got some V8s, we've got some NASCAR and some IndyCar. So stay with us here on Sports Scene.
Do you have a street light that's not functioning correctly outside your property? Perhaps you've noticed a floodlight over a zebra crossing that's not operating. Well, Energex would like you to report it to them by calling 13 12 53 or completing an online form for faulty streetlights on their website at energex.com.au. Remember also that the council has to pay the running cost of all the streetlights, whether they're working or not. So let's get the most for our rateable dollar by reporting the streetlights not functioning to Energex on 13 12 53 or on their website energex.com.au.
Four-wheel driving on Fraser Island can be dangerous. Take sand driving seriously. Don't let your trip turn to tragedy. Slow down, stick to the speed limit. In good conditions, 80 kilometres an hour on the beach and 30 on inland tracks. Slower is safer. Seatbelts save lives. Wear them, it's the law. Police patrol the beach anytime. Make your visit to Fraser fun, not fatal.
Be listening to Focus on the Family at 2:30 each weekday, sponsored by Sunny Faces Early Learning Centre. Call 3209 3800.
101 FM. You're listening to Saturday Sports Scene on the voice of Logan City, 101 FM.
Welcome back to Sports Scene here on 101 FM. It's Kevin Braysher, Craig Crowley, Lee Hanatscheck, Darren Madigan, all with you still. Ethan's had to duck out early. He's got a game to go cover this afternoon up at Redcliffe, but big thanks to Ethan for being with us again, as he is every single week. Craig, before we move on to the motorsport section, Southport have the bye from the NEAFL this week, but they do have a game tonight in the Foxtel Cup.
Yes, at 2 o'clock today we play Burnie in the Foxtel Cup, the qualifying match.
What do you know about them?
Stadium. And that'll be televised on Fox 3 after that. So if you want to watch it, about 5 o'clock, I think it's on. So for all the people that don't know much about the Southport Football Club and want to see how they play, 5 o'clock tonight on Fox 3.
Absolutely right. And while we're plugging stuff, I need to plug this one again. Remember, Sausage Sizzle all weekend long. Your radio station will be cooking up a storm at Office Works on Crompton Road, Underwood. Come and meet some of the team from 101 FM and grab yourself something delicious to eat and drink and support your voice in the community, your radio station, 101 FM. Lee, now it's time to talk some motorsport. We had the Chinese Grand Prix last week. Fernando Alonso coming out on top with Kimi Raikkonen and Lewis Hamilton also getting on the podium. How'd you see the race?
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was a great race. It actually had you, sort of watching on the edge of the seat as I was flicking between the showdown last week. But it was, it was one of those races where, while Alonso was out in front, you really didn't know what was going to happen for second, third, and fourth, which is what motor racing, should be. You shouldn't know what's going to happen until the end. Whereas, some previous race, you knew who was going to finish where. But I think it was an exciting race. The interesting thing was with Mark Webber. He had an incident with I think it was Verne, who made an inside pass. Yep. Then they made contact. He, as a result, gets the penalty of 3 grid spots for the next race. Then he had a pit stop, and just a note to the Red Bull mechanics: lefty loosey, righty tighty. When you put a wheel on, turning it left, it's loose. Right, it goes on and goes tighter. Of course, Mark Webber eventually had to retire with a find time to leave me loose wheel. So, Mark Webber. Firstly, his car runs out of fuel in qualifying. Secondly, he loses a wheel. Yeah. Is it just coincidence?
Yeah. Was Vettel actually driving this time, or he wasn't in the pit crew?
No, he wasn't in the pit crew. No, he was actually in his car. So. I'm not sure what's going on there, but you can't be having a whole lot of confidence in your team when just silly stuff like that happens. As a result, Webber started from pit lane because you have to have enough fuel in the car for the FIA to be able to get a fuel sample at the end of every session. And because he ran out of fuel, they weren't able to get any fuel sample from his car, so therefore he was excluded from that part of the session. Wow. Therefore, he starts from pit lane for the race. So, it just went from bad to worse from the start.
What a crazy couple of weeks he's got.
It's just, crazy catch. But, they're back in action this weekend at Bahrain. Mark Webber will make his 200th race start. Great achievement by Mark, and just to show that he's, he doesn't give up easily.
No.
And that's certainly what he's shown there with 200 race starts, which is, great for him. Who knows what's going to happen this weekend, Bahrain. Maybe his team might get it right and he might finish on the podium. Who knows? But a great result last weekend for Daniel Ricciardo. Finished 7th, his highest finish in his F1 career for the young Australian. So it's great to see. Good to see that he's getting some results on the board. And who knows, if things pan out the way they are showing, he may be in the main Red Bull team next year.
Absolutely. Darren, have you seen the F1 over the last week or so?
Yeah, it was. I mean, look, conspiracy theories are never much fun, and you don't read anything into what happened last week with Red Bull. I mean, at the end of the day, we're talking loss of Constructors' Championship points, which means millions of dollars. So they're not going to be stupid enough to do something like that. That was purely a product. His wheel coming off was purely a product of 2.5 second pit stops. These pit stops are getting quicker and quicker and quicker, and sooner or later, people are going to make mistakes, which they have been. Red Bull aren't the only team that this has happened to. It happens. After practice session 2, Kimi Räikkönen is fastest from Mark Webber at the moment, and there's nothing in it time-wise. Sebastian Vettel just behind him and Fernando Alonso 4th. Interesting to see. Obviously, there's a lot of talk in the media about what Mark's doing. The deal that was proposed was 5 years, heading up the Le Mans prototype program as Porsche come back in, and 5 years, £2 million a year. I wonder. I mean, I said last week that, I just can't really see that sort of thing happening. Not to say it won't, because the way things have been going lately, you never know what's going to happen. But £2 million a year for someone like Mark Webber to put himself in a position to race those races, including Le Mans again, and he's had a pretty checkered time in sports cars, especially when he was racing for Mercedes. It was pretty dangerous stuff. I just wonder whether he would be prepared to sign a 5-year deal for that much. I think maybe, with Porsche coming out during the week and saying, hey guys, come on, stop jumping on the bandwagon. I think it's a little while away yet. The other thing too is we say there's nowhere for Mark to go. Well, that's maybe not entirely correct. I mean, there could be a 1-year drive at Ferrari, although teaming up with his good mate Fernando Alonso, I'm not sure I could see that happening. Alonso likes to be number one, much like Schumacher did, and I just couldn't see Mark putting up with that yet again. But as we get a little bit further into the season, we'll see the silly circus start to see drivers drop off and come in and all that sort of stuff, and there may be a few more windows open. But I wouldn't be jumping on the Porsche sports car bandwagon just yet, especially not for a 5-year deal at £2 million a year.
Just to clarify, £2 million a year, that's a pay cut, that's a low wage.
That's a big pay cut. Yeah.
Big cut, yeah, just making sure. Because, in Australian sporting circles, that's huge money, but I understand, overseas and all the rest of it, it's not great money.
Yeah. That's a big pay cut for Webber.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big pay cut, but he'll still be he'll do some endorsements, and that's for what, a handful of races a year, a few test days, no pressure.
Put up with Sebastian Vettel.
Yeah, always put up with Vettel. What else does he do? He just go and retire and just not, just get his endorsements.
Well, Schumacher's doing that. Schumacher's heavily involved with road safety campaigns for the FIA and ambassador roles with, I think, ambassador roles with someone like Mercedes or somebody like that. So
and also the official test driver for the Tony Kart factory team was this weekend is at Sano with the team, with the WSK Euro Series. Mm-hmm. Actually, he took a photo with young Australian Joseph Mawson overnight as well. Yeah. So, Schumacher's getting out and about. But talking last weekend, V8 supercars. Yep. You couldn't have written the fairy tale any better. Jason Bright driving the car that the late Jason Richards used to drive, the BOC Commodore, takes out the inaugural Jason Richards trophy. I mean, I was sitting there and knowing both guys and knowing the team and Brad Jones well, and you just sort of sit there and your throat swells up because it was just an amazing moment, and to see Bridie take that trophy was just you couldn't have written the script any better. I think everyone in V8 Supercar world agreed with that.
It's one of those things in sport where sometimes the reality is better than anything you could have scripted with it. And remember a few years ago, Darren and I were talking about this before the show, actually, when Rocky passed away, and then they named the cup after him for Bathurst. And, the one guy who would have wanted to win it was Lounsey, and he won it that year. It's just a great moment.
Yeah. And I think that's the analogy that we were using for Adam Scott winning the Masters as well. I mean, you're talking about, even though obviously Greg Norman's still with us, there is that whole business. So sometimes, if the fairy tale's going to happen, there's only one person that should win.
Can I just verging off of motorsport just briefly, but I don't want to see another Australian win on American soil in a major event. Reason behind that? You're looking at me strange.
Yeah, I'm looking at you pretty strange right now too, actually.
On what date did Leighton Hewitt win the US Open?
Oh, it would have been August or something, in somewhere along the line.
September 10, 2001.
Yes, it was.
What happened September 11?
We all know what happened September
2001. Yes. Now we've had Adam Scott.
Now that's a stat.
US Masters.
Oh, gee.
The day before the Boston Marathon.
Yeah.
Eerie.
Yeah.
I just say you're talking about Aaron Scott. I meant to bring it up before, but it just hit me then.
Yeah.
That is.
You're full of good news, aren't you?
The most eeriest stat you'll ever get.
This is why we love having you on the show, Lee. Only you would come out with that.
Oh, how creepy is that?
That is eerie stuff.
Yeah. Look, we've. Oh, goodness.
International sports people.
So anyway, back on motorsport.
Yeah.
After I've thrown that stat in there.
Because I've got NASCAR and IndyCar to get on to.
Yeah, but before we do, Darren, V8 Supercar's in a bit of a leadership crisis at the moment.
Yes.
Dave Malone, the CEO, who's been the CEO for 14 months, resigned yesterday. Or sorry, not resigned, but he's sort of moved away and stood down as the CEO. He's now in a contractor role, or some sort of role still involved. But, there's talks that James Warburton, the ex-Network 10 boss, ex-7 boss, was sued by 7 for leaving, going to 10. Yeah. There's a bit of uproar all throughout the V8 Supercar ranks. I mean, over the next sort of week, I think we'll see it all pan out. But it's not all roses at the top of the management scale of V8 Supercars at the moment. I think that'll be their 5th CEO in the last 5 years or something along those lines. You've had Dave Malone, who's now gone. You had before him Martin Whittaker. Then you had Cameron Levick before then. They've all lasted between 12 months and 14 months or 18 months or something like that. So after a lot of change, you had the chairman Tony Cochran move on last year as well. So we'll keep you up to date, but it's certainly an interesting time in the world of V8 Supercars and the management of the sport.
It absolutely is. And look, we talked about it a fair bit before the season got underway, but the mess with that TV deal was just something you don't see it. Like, the TV deal isn't done a couple of weeks out from the start of a season. It's just not right.
No, it's just not right, and that's why Malone was brought in. He was an ex-Fox Sports CEO, brought in to try and get that TV deal done. It didn't get done till the absolute death knock.
Yeah.
And then with the talk of James Warburton coming in, as I said, he was 7. He's gone to he went to 10. He then was released from 10 on February 22 this year. The two contenders for the free-to-air TV rights in 2 years' time is going to be 7 and 10.
Yeah.
He's been at both.
Yeah.
Has he got a good relationship with either of them? Well, I don't know the bloke, but I'm tipping that he hasn't after all the stuff going out in the media. So, interesting times.
Absolutely. Darren, we've got some NASCAR and IndyCar before we move on to the rest of the show.
All right, IndyCar, current standings, Elio Castroneves, Scotty Dixon, Ryan Hunter-Ray, your top 3. Will Power is currently 8th at the moment. Now, after practice, we've just finished the second practice, and Ryan Hunter-Ray from Mike Conway and Will Power sitting in 3rd spot at the moment. This is the race in Long Beach. This is one of the jewels in the crown of IndyCar racing. Some interesting news coming out of Long Beach at the moment with Chris Pook, who was the original founder, one of the founders of the race all those years ago when it was actually a Formula One Grand Prix, and a very high-up agent who deals in selling these sort of events around the place. They're talking about, with 1 year left, I believe, on the contract here, the possibility of selling it back to Formula One and having a USA Grand Prix West. Bernie Eccleston is his usual self. He hasn't ruled anything out, but he's piped up and said, yeah, that'd be something we would look at, and they would then have 3 races in the United States. So that would be an interesting one, because it was a very, very good race back in the early 1980s when it was actually a Grand Prix race, but it's pretty much been an IndyCar race ever since. As far as NASCAR is concerned, we've got, after last week, the winner last week was Kyle Busch from Martin Truex Jr. and Carl Edwards. Marcus Ambrose came 19th. Standings at the moment, Jimmy Johnson, Kyle Busch and Greg Biffle, your top 3. Marcus Ambrose has picked up a bit. He's up to 17th spot at the moment. This weekend, they're racing on another 1.5 mile oval. It's like Weet-Bix for those guys, this stuff. And it's the STP 400 in Kansas. So that's what will be happening there. Also, talk coming out of Bahrain that they want our spot on the Formula One calendar as well. And they have actually had it a couple of times in previous years. So
50 years. What's going on?
Sorry?
Our spot is in the first
that time of the year.
The first race of the year.
First race of the year. So, Bernie's opening his ears again, and no doubt there'll be the usual political stuff going back and forth. But I think they've got a lot more to worry about in Bahrain at the moment, rather than worrying about what date they're going to be holding the race on. I think it's more a case of if they're actually going to get to hold the race if they don't get their political stuff sorted out.
That's it. Look, we've got to take a break now. When we come back, we're going to wrap up the show with some netball, some Super 15 and some Black Caviar talk. Stay with us here on SportzScene.
Hi, this is Eric Banner, patron of the Australian Childhood Foundation. There were over 300,000 reports of children being abused in Australia last year alone. It's a problem we have to face up to. Child abusers are counting on you to do nothing. But there is something you can do. By going to stopchildabusenow.com.au, you can find out how we can help protect our children. So please, stop doing nothing.
Veterans, their partners and war widows may be eligible to receive assistance from the Department of Veteran Affairs for one-on-one exercise conditioning and or rehabilitation programs with a doctor's referral to an exercise physiologist. Veterans who hold gold or white DVA pension cards and who reside in the Logan City area are encouraged to telephone Rebecca on 0437 542 095 for more information.
If you want the latest and best movies on the big screen, plus a delicious morning tea, all for a very low admission price, then you must come along to the 101 FM monthly movies at station sponsor, the Hyperplex Cinemas Logan Home. Keep listening for details of the next screening and then join us, Logan City's 101 FM.
101 FM.
You're listening to Saturday Sports Scene on your station, 101 FM.
Welcome back to Sports Scene here on 101 FM. It's 12 minutes to 10. Your next fresh news update coming up at the top of the hour. A reminder, all weekend long, your radio station will be cooking up a storm at Office Works on Crompton Road, Underwood. Come and meet some of the team from 101 FM and grab yourself something delicious to eat and drink and support your voice in the community, your radio station, 101 FM. It's Kevin Braysher, Craig Crowley, Lee Hanatscheck, and Darren Madigan with you, taking you through to the top of the hour. Darren, quickly, we'll get through some netball now. It's time for the next round of the ANZ Championship, mate. What's happening in the world of netball?
Indeed. Currently, at the moment, the Firebirds are leading the competition from the Melbourne Vixens, Adelaide Thunderbirds, and the Waikato Bay of Plenty Magic. That's your top 4. The rest of the comp, Central Pulse, West Coast Fever, Southern Steel, New South Wales Swifts, Tactics and the Northern Mystics. Winners last week were comfortably for the Thunderbirds. Central Pulse 3-goal winners over the Southern Steel. Melbourne Vixens had a bye, so did the Waikato Bay of Plenty Magic. Hugely high-scoring game for netball. The Tactics, 80 goals, beat the Northern Mystics 78, so a lot of goals scored in that match. And New South Wales Swifts, 53 went down to the Queensland Firebirds, 61 at Sydney Olympic Park this week. Adelaide Thunderbirds playing the Melbourne Vixens. I'm tipping the Vixens there. West Coast Fever are at home to the New South Wales Swifts. I'm going to go against a bit of the trend and tip Norma Plummer's West Coast Fever. Northern Mystics are playing the Central Pulse. I'm tipping the Pulse. The 2 byes this week are the Southern Steel and the Queensland Firebirds, having a nice well-earned break at the top of the ladder. And the Waikato Bay of Plenty Magic will be playing the Tactics, and I think they'll they'll probably end up thrashing them, actually. As far as the local comp is concerned, current standings in the Queensland Champions Cup. Tigers ahead of the Cougars, Suncoast Lynx, Golden South Jaguars make up your four, the Townsville Steel Cats, Brisbane West Lions, the Elite Development Squad, who can't make the finals anyway, and the Logan Wildcats. During the week, we had the Cougars defeat the Elite Development Squad on Wednesday night at Logan Metro, 68-47, and also a game outside the comp. The Golden South Jags played a one-off match against an AIS team. And they went down by 9 goals, 49-40, but just really great to see that playing a great game against them. It was played at Tullabudra, and there was about 300 people packed out that indoor stadium there. So really well done to the guys who organised that match. Today we have the Steel Cats playing the Golden South Jags at the State Netball Centre at Clump Road. That's at 3 p.m. At 7 p.m. tonight at Logan Metro, we have the Logan Wildcats playing the Brisbane West Lions, and at the University of the Sunshine Coast, the Tigers will be taking on the Suncoast Lynx at 7 p.m. tonight. So that brings you up to date on that local comp. But really great effort there from the guys at Golden South region on the Gold Coast, getting that AIS team organised to play against them, and putting up a really good performance, and a great crowd too. 300 people in that little centre there. If you've ever been there, would have seen that place packed. So well done.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for that, Darren. We move on now to the world of rugby union. Big clash tonight, probably the biggest clash of the season as far as the Australian Conference is concerned. The Reds versus the Brumbies, Suncorp Stadium. They're expecting 40,000 plus to cram into Suncorp Stadium for this one. That'll be at 7:40 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Should be a cracking game of football. Both of them playing good footy. The Reds coming off against a really good win last week over the Chiefs over in New Zealand. That was a great win for them. All the big guns are back and firing for them. So look, there's been a bit of fire in the build-up to this one. The coaches are having shots at each other on each side. And as much as this game is about the winner will go to the top of the Australian Conference, at the same time, there's an interesting little subplot to it all between these two coaches. Both men have put their hands up as to say that they want the Wallabies coaching job. And to me, there's a little bit of one-upsmanship between the two in the way that they've been, dealing with the media this week. Darren, is that just me reading into things a little bit too deeply? I just get the sense that both of them sort of putting their case forward a little bit. No,
I think you're spot on. The other question too is what's happening with Ewan McKenzie and the Ireland job? Is that one that he's going to really go for and use it as a stepping stone to the Wallabies job? I don't know, but we've been talking about that for a good couple of months now, I think. And are we any closer to having an answer on that? I don't think so.
Not that I've heard. It's probably more a bargaining chip. I think, Wallabies job is the one he wants.
Yeah, of course. But sometimes you've got to get another job to get that job.
Yep, understand that one. Yep. Look, I like the Reds in this one at home. The Brumbies got them back in round one the last time they met. I think the Reds, they're a stronger side now. They're starting to find some form. Quade Cooper was very good last week. Genny is back. Horwell's back. They're looking more like the side that went all the way and won the competition back in 2011. So I think in front of a big parochial home crowd at Suncorp Stadium tonight, I think the Reds will be too good. But another big news coming out of the Super 15 this week, and it also involves this game. George Smith, who we talked about a bit on the show over the last few weeks, his Japanese club Suntory have allowed an extension for him, so he will play out the rest of the Super 15 season. Initially, he was going to just play the 12 games midway through the year. Now he'll play out the rest of the season, and what this means for Australian rugby is not just that we get a world-class player for the rest of the season for the Brumbies. He's also now eligible to play in the Lions Tour for Australia. It's not yet available. Here's where it gets a little complicated. He needs to get a clearance and a part-time extension from Robbie Deans and from the ARU. We won't know about exactly if that's going to be the case until he meets with Robbie Deans, which is expected to happen tonight. I'm expecting it to be all cleared through and that George Smith will be there running out for the Wallabies, to add to his already 110 test caps come the Lions Tour in June. How are we expecting this to come out? I thought it was good news during the week, and I think it'll probably be that.
Sensational news. Sensational news. Change the rule now. Fix it. Fix the problem. That's what I reckon.
Yep. I think they need to have Smith in there to have that strong leadership in there. He's obviously not part of the 30-strong squad that's already been picked for the Wallabies. So
you can rotate him into the squad, though.
Can you rotate him in? No problems at all. I think he's he needs to be there. You know, make it happen. It's
I
quite
agree,
simple.
particularly with the loss of David Pocock. You know, to get an old head and an experienced head and a winner, a proven winner into the side is a big thing. Liam Gill and Michael Hooper have both been very good this year, but I think they'll gain plenty from playing with George Smith throughout the Lions tour, and I think Australia gains plenty by having George Smith there.
And at the end of the day, if he's worth his position, he's good enough to be playing in that position, you pick him. Absolutely, and he's been outstanding. He's been the Brumbies' best player for the last 6-7 weeks, however long he's been there. It's been terrific. So I expect him to come out of that meeting with Deans and the ARU available to play in this Lions test. But we'll have to wait and see how that all plays out. Quick look at the rest of the round in the Super 15, round 10. Already at the halfway point in the season, believe it or not. We've got the Crusaders up against the Highlanders tonight. We've got the Sharks and the Cheetahs over in South Africa. That'll be early Sunday morning our time. And we've got the Southern Kings up against the Bulls, also Sunday morning our time, nice and early, 3 a.m. if you like your rugby. Just to wind up the show now, it's 4 minutes to 10 at the top of the hour here on 101 FM on Sports Scene. Kevin Braysher, Craig Crowley, Lee Hanatscheck, all with you. We've had a retirement of a real sporting great in this country during the week, and it's been 25-0 is the number that Black Caviar will retire on. She raced last week, she won last week. We didn't know at the time, but that was the last time we'll ever get to see, arguably one of Australia's greatest horses run. Guys, what were our feelings when we saw the news come through? Craig, I might go to you first with this one. When we saw that Black Caviar won't be running anymore. I think it was inevitable, wasn't it? Like, they've been speaking about it for so long. When is it going to be its last race? How many wins is enough wins? I think it's proven. It's how many Group 1s beat Kingston Towns? Whether that was the purpose, whether that was the purpose to make sure it was touted as the best Group 1 horse in the world, in Australia. Whether that was the situation, whether the injuries that it sustained through a lot of running. They did say on its last race that it just, even though it won convincingly, it really had to work the last bit to win the race, even though, as I said, it won convincingly. I think it's a situation of when the timing was right. I don't think it was it was up to how many wins or when it gets beaten. Yeah, and I think it was just a case of it's done what it had to do, and let's retire it. Let's look in the best interest of the horse.
The time was right. It's already on the Daily Telegraph Female Sports Person of the Year, Sportswoman of the Year, I should say. So, it's great to see. It's done what it's needed to do. Yeah. 25 wins. The big thing was if they'd kept running it another few races. If it did sustain an injury, if it did unfortunately have a major incident somewhere along the lines, it's going to earn more money for the owners now than what it would in the last 12 months.
And like they said in the press conference, 25 is a nice round number to end it on. It's a great place to finish. And, she goes out on top as, the great. She wins big in the last race. Darren, how much money is her offspring going to be worth in the coming times? That's going to be the next story with Black Caviar, isn't it?
It is, but there's also word coming out that they weren't going to sell any of them either. They were going to race them. So I find that rather odd, but we'll see what ends up happening there. But, look, the horse is going to make so much more breeding than it could ever make on the track. It isn't funny, but it's on the track where it did its stuff and made its legacy, and that's how it's going to make its money as a breeder. And they're all sitting back. Of course, they got smiles on their faces. They're rich beyond their wildest dreams, and good on the trainer, who must have probably got up one morning, taken a look at her, and said, "She's telling me enough's enough, and I'll go to the owners now and have a chat with them." And it was good to see. It's Gerard Whateley reckons that he probably should have had the fairy tale should have ended over in England, but hey, what the hell? The thing's 125, and now it's going to make a fortune as a breeder.